Hi everyone, welcome. We're down here in my VermiBag Mini, and this system has now reached 190 days of age. A couple weeks have passed, 14 days, since our last check-in on this system, at which time the system was given its 15th feeding. So those are all the numbers I tried to keep in my head from my tracking spreadsheet. Pretty easy numbers, 190, 14 and 15. I mean, there's other numbers such as the estimated worm count in this system, which doesn't really come to mind at the moment. But for some reason, 3,200 some odd worms comes to mind. But, you know, that's going back quite some time, so those numbers gradually change over time, or at least I like to think that they do. Hopefully the numbers increase versus decrease. So this is a chunk of little pumpkin, like a mini gourd. Last time we kind of held this object in front of the camera for a little while, and all the worms that were out here on the surface all went down deep. And I wondered if it would be possible to shake the contents of this thing loose. That's the reason I bought this little piece of wood over here, so that maybe I can try smacking it up against something and dislodging its contents. I think I've just chipped a little bit of it off. Is that what happened here? No, that's another piece. There's a number of these in here. And the last time we were in here, we excavated them as we normally do to inspect how they're progressing. There's other objects in here too, large objects such as this, the stem of a pumpkin, which always seems to have a few worms hanging out on it, but it's a pretty large object, which I think is going to take quite some time to break down. And here's another chunk of pumpkin stem, I believe. Today I wanted to see if I could maybe maintain my focus and concentration on an idea I had last time, because I even kicked the idea around. I kind of socialized the idea on camera, and some viewers even kind of heard what I said and even questioned why I didn't follow through on the idea. And to tell you the truth, I think my only explanation is that I'm a scatterbrain and that I probably should have, because it was what I had thought I might do, but then I guess my attention was distracted and I didn't really follow through. But I guess I'll repeat the idea, and hopefully today I'll remember to follow through, because the idea was to take these chunks of pumpkin gourd, or whatever they are. Pumpkin gourd, or is it just gourd? I think they're just little pumpkins, or at least I think that they're little pumpkins, because these are those things that people put out as decoration alongside their jack-o'-lanterns at Halloween time. And I managed to get my hands on a few of them, along with a number of pumpkins too, at the end of the Halloween season this past year. And they every time I check one of them out, it feels like it's really light, and then eventually when it does reveal its insides, I see no seeds, I see no fleshy, meaty vegetable matter. It's just a hollow object, and it kind of makes me wonder, what are these things? I thought they were vegetables that you could even maybe open up and prepare as a meal and eat them. But it seems to me like every time one of these things ends up in my worm bins and I finally get to see what its insides look like, the thing is just hollow. So we're finally getting down into the feeding area where the worms are. The last feeding, I believe, consisted of potato peels for the most part. And today's meal, let me just show you really quick what I had in mind. This assortment here is cantaloupe rinds and cabbage. So it does seem like the letters CA are on the menu. I'm even thinking maybe we complement that CA theme with some calcium. Perhaps I'll go grab my grit, which is just pulverized eggshell, which is in large part calcium. So perhaps the letters CA are the letters for the day here. If any of you watched Sesame Street when you were kids, then you'll know there was always like a letter and a number for the day. Perhaps the letters for today are CA. So now I'm kind of on the border line here in terms of doing something that I promised myself I wouldn't do, which is to excavate down into the system. Because when I originally prepared this system, it really got put together by me emptying a bunch of my composting buckets into here after those buckets had already been in service for 6 months. So at the very bottom of this system is what I would assume is, for the most part, just finished castings, because I didn't separate the worms from their material at that time. I simply emptied the buckets as they were, with the assumption that all those nice fine castings at the bottom of this thing would have a good amount of time to really sort of break down, or continue to break down even further and become really nice, so that at some point in the future, when it comes time to harvest castings out of this flow-through system, it really just consists of opening up a little hatch at the bottom and allowing the material to drop out, and then you zip it back up and it'll start settling back down again. Actually, you're supposed to help it settle it down again, I think, by sort of shaking the contents and letting it all drop back down to the bottom, and then that relieves a little bit of the space constraints up top. So now, I guess just to get really quick back to the topic at hand, my idea last time was to actually take some of the foods that I came in here with last time and use those foods to stuff these little chunks of hollow gourd. That's the reason I was seeing if I can empty this piece here, but the worms seem to have really packed it full down at the bottom. But I still think we can maybe squeeze a little bit of perhaps cantaloupe rind down into that cavity within this piece of gourd. Oops, I just put a crack in the side of it. So now some of these larger chunks might be easier to fill. So here we're going to come in with some, I believe it's the peels of some pear. And then I guess I somehow imagine myself having a little bit more space to work in over here. I did actually a couple hours ago remove these foods from the freezer so that they'd have an opportunity to thaw out a little bit and maybe become a little bit pliable, so that this idea could be followed up on with me actually jamming some of this stuff down into these gourds. And I guess the whole idea with this is that we're not going to see anything very interesting immediately, but hopefully when we come back in here next time to check in on these systems, we'll find that the worms had discovered this nice little treat here and made themselves at home within it in pursuit of the yummy foods. So you can see all the juices starting to flow out of the fruits and veggies here as I start cramming the stuff in here. And I wanted to also thaw the stuff out because I felt kind of bad for any worms that I didn't manage to shake out of these things, because I figured this stuff would still be a little bit frosty when the time came to feed, and I really didn't want to, jam these things full of frozen stuff and potentially freeze out any little worms that might be occupying these things. So yeah, there's a lot of melon juice and cabbage juice flowing here. And you can see I just put another crack into one of these fins on this crazy looking gourd. And I thought I don't know why, but I thought I had other pieces, and maybe I did. Maybe there were some other larger pieces that got shattered or something, but I guess we can maybe just do a little bit more probing around here to see if we can locate any other similar chunks. This is just another piece of pumpkin stem. One thing we talked about in the past was to possibly start helping, oops, jeez, now I got pumpkin stem bits all over my floor, all around me. Perhaps one of these days I'll have an actual excuse to sweep up the floor around me. There's all kinds of bits of shredded paper and cardboard and this and that surrounding me because, you know, I'm in my basement, a room in my basement that I dedicate to this activity of worm farming, and I don't worry too much about keeping things too tidy down here. But yeah, I'm glad that we were able to come back in here and sort of follow through on an incomplete thought from last time and do this little weird experiment of jamming their feeding, or at least part of the feeding, down into some of these hollow pieces of veggie. So let's position these down within the bedding. Sometimes I forget and then I start backfilling the hole, and then I realize that, hey, I've got all these objects that need to be jammed down into the material. And you know, we'll face these last few fragments of gourd in such a way that we can rest a whole bunch of yummy food on top of them too, because I've still got a good bit of food here for them. So let's just go ahead and drop it in. And as you can see, it's far more than what we placed within the gourds. There's a good bit of cabbage here, even a couple chunks of cantaloupe melon rind that didn't manage to get squeezed into the gourds. So hopefully the worms appreciate this interesting little meal. And, you know, I don't have coffee for them today, because when I do, I usually come in with the coffee filter as well. But I think we'll just reuse this coffee filter once again to serve the purpose of feeding zone indicator. But you know what? Before we proceed, give me 1 minute. I want to go get some of that grit that we're going to sprinkle in here. Remember? CA number 3. Calcium. Crushed eggshell. I'll be right back. Cabbage, cantaloupe rind, and calcium. So that's the theme for the day. And I've got another powdery substance right here too, which I prepared to include with the feeding too. And that's my worm chow, which looks kind of like this. I prepared a fresh batch of it not long ago, so I've got a plentiful amount of it here. I figured we would just start backfilling the hole a little bit first, and then I would sprinkle some of this nice bedding material that we've got out here with some of the worm chow, because this cardboard, what's this? Oh geez. Now we've got a hollow piece of gourd with no fruit to stick into it. So why don't we stick that one full of bedding and some worm chow. Oh, well, some worm chow. All right, maybe a little more than I anticipated, but we'll get to see how they like that. Maybe I didn't really embark on my search for leftover chunks of material in here in the best possible way, because we clearly missed a pretty good sized piece of gourd that we could have jammed full of some cabbage and cantaloupe. This is another stem of pumpkin. You know, over the past few check-ins, I do recall mentioning how I was prepared to spray water in here and dampen stuff if needed, but we had on each occasion found that things were plenty moist and comfortable in here, or at least so it seemed to me, and we simply didn't bother applying any moisture. But today I'm starting to wonder if maybe we could add a little bit. I mean, we not only skipped adding moisture and spraying water in, but we also added a whole bunch of just plain old dry boring cardboard. So perhaps today would be a good day to actually get the spray bottle out here and apply a little bit of moisture. I mean, it's right here on hand, and all it is a matter of me grabbing it and using it. So I usually have it standing here all ready to go, all charged up with pressure. It's just a matter of grabbing the wand and applying some moisture. The material that I excavated from around the edges was a little bit dry, I must say. So if nothing else, perhaps it is a good precautionary measure to apply moisture around the edges, so that as it attempts to perhaps go through the fabric of the bag and be lost to evaporation out the sides, we put a little extra moisture in there to help with keeping things in the system nice and comfortable, to promote worm traffic throughout. And since we excavated a good bit of that dry stuff and it sits out here on the top surface now, perhaps we can just apply a little bit extra water to that stuff too, to make sure we're keeping things nice and comfortable for the worms. I'm not sure how much I've dispensed so far, but hopefully it'll drip down into the somewhat dry material that's right below and moisten everything to the point where the worms are comfortable hanging out there too. I mean, maybe we won't see a whole lot of action out there. Maybe it will be a good idea in future check-ins to just till that stuff up and, you know, make sure that it's getting blended with some moist materials that surround it, and give all the stuff in here a fair chance at being approached by worms and broken down. So I'm just sprinkling a little bit more of my worm chow here. Why not? Maybe it'll give the worms an excuse to come out here and cruise the surface, nibble on some of that worm chow, and even work some of this stuff that's out here on the top. I mean, after all, I am covering it with plastic each time, and I do attempt to position the plastic in such a way that it doesn't allow for much airflow around the edges. I mean, I suppose I could even sort of tuck it in a little bit just to make sure it is, in fact, doing its job of keeping moisture down within the bedding. And I've also got bubble wrap kind of wrapped around the entire container to possibly prevent, you know, moisture loss. Although up here it doesn't matter so much. It's what's beneath this plastic and down lower is what's the important part. But whatever. I'm doing my best to keep things cozy in here, and I think it's pretty good. So that's it for our check-in with the VermiBag Mini. Doing pretty good here on day 190, if you ask me. Things look pretty nice in here, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how those gourds look next time we come in here. Not only the ones that have fruits and veggies jammed into them, but also that one where it just has bedding and worm chow. That should be interesting too. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.